Hello, this is Ashley Pitzer with Practicing Life. Today, we are talking about authority, specifically personal authority. I'm going to touch on the definition of it, just lightly go over some of the external factors to it, and then we'll get into the real part of the episode, which is how do you have personal power in your own life and the decisions that you're making right now. So, the definition: the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. Obedience. Okay, so you can see how this definition already is looking at authority very externally, but authority happens all around us every day, and you have it right now. So when we look at it externally, I'm going to just lightly touch on the fact that, at least in the United States, that authority is often considered socially something that we're changing right now in our history and have been over time, but traditionally it has been reserved for white males. This was going back a lot of years. And as you can see that this is slowly starting to change, but even like as I stand right now, when I looked at statistics, like only 19% of women are represented in Congress, and 5% of women are CEOs amongst Fortune 500 companies. So there's a big gender gap between the authority figures that we see, our role models. Like, what we see is what we often emulate into our life and we perpetuate going forward. But I just want to thank all of the strong, amazing women leaders out there that have stepped up and helped make a difference in our life today, and to all of the men who saw women as being equal. You guys are freaking awesome. And I can't wait to see the future and how we continue to grow and view each other as equals. All right. So, what do I want to say about this? Well, first, I'm just going to say a little fun little nugget of information that I learned. But there was a college university that had done a study on men and women and power positions. And one of the things that they found was that men were automatically perceived as more confident than women. Right, people? But here's the truth about it, because I coach a lot of women that are in power positions like CEOs, and they do have a struggle. It's something that we talk about because a lot of times, and it doesn't have to, I don't have to coach like necessarily a person in a power position. Like one of the women's that I coach is just somebody who's going out and competing in a sport. And, even in that client, whether that client is a CEO or a client is somebody just off competing, or if it's somebody in the just your everyday workforce, like healthcare, this is very typical for the women that I coach, where there is a double standard that exists, where men are allowed to be forthright, honest, direct. And if a woman emulates that exact same behavior, is viewed as assertive or the B word, right? So there is a double standard that exists. And my job as a coach is to help you just with your own internal processes, your mindset, how you feel about it, and again, claiming your own personal power. And that's really the angle that I'm going to go after. Because what, life isn't what happens to you. I know that some people think it is, but that's really, in my perspective, especially with how I coach, the angle I take at that is like, that is a victim mentality. What happens to you means it's outside of your control. So to me, life is experiencing the choices that you make into the things that occur in your life. When you talk about choices, you have control. There are going to be things that happen that are outside of your control, but you still have the choice of how you're going to respond to it. And that, again, is within your control. So it is how you have your mindset, where your perception is, where are you holding your attention? All right. Getting into personal power, I want you to think about personal power as in the ability to make decisions for yourself. All right. So When I looked at authority, there's some things that have come up for me over time. Authority is about deciding for yourself what is right, what is wrong, what is preferable, what is desirable, what is likable, right? It has a lot of internal trust to it and discovering who you are and claiming that and sticking to it. But this is what I see in reality. I am going to pretend that this is a tray and I'm holding a tray like a server is. And let's say you have a decision to make in your life. It could be as simple as, should I spend the money to go to this concert? Or should I spend the money to buy, this pool or this birthday party for my kid, right? And it doesn't even have to be about money. Should I take this job? Would this job benefit me? All right. So, whatever choice that you're making right now, I want you to think about it being like a food option for yourself. And you have a server and you have a menu. And on your menu, there are tons and tons of choices. Now, our brain doesn't see tons of choices often. When we start making decisions, our brain is going to pull up past memories and it's going to pull up things that we see in social media, in the news, examples from other people, and that's going to be your options. And then those options are going to start dwindling down, just like in a menu. When you're looking at it, you start dwindling down your choices based on your own emotional preferences. So if you have all of these choices, your personal preferences are going to start dwindling them down. Like you're going to say, well, on Friday night, I have X, Y, and Z going. This limits my time. If you're looking at a job, you're going to start saying, well, this career, makes this type of money. I'm going to aim towards this. So there's certain preferences that you automatically start taking into consideration. But where you give your personal power away is it's like you are like a server and you're putting your choices on a tray and you've made the selection, so to speak. And then you're going up to your mom, your friend, your coworker, your boss, and you're handing them this tray and you're saying, hey, I have a choice to make. Which one should I make? Which one do you like best? So here you are, here's your tray, and you're handing it over to your friend and you're saying, hey, help me make my decision. What do you see here? What appeals to you? And then that person is going to look at your tray of food, AKA your options that you've kind of bullet pointed out, and they're going to look at it from their own perspective. What is their own emotional amplitude? What is their fears? What examples do they have in their life? What do they know? Right? So, like, for instance, when we had a friend talk to us about renting out their home versus selling it, and here's their tray they're handing me, and they're saying, hey, should I go ahead and sell my home? Or the other option is, should I rent it out? And they're saying, hey, pick for me. What would you choose? So, and then I'm looking at this tray and automatically, just like your taste buds are different than another person, my fears are going to come in and be like, oh, I've had too many examples of where people have rented out their home and it has been damaged severely, and then they've had to spend all this time and money and they didn't really make out in the end. Yes, do I know that other options like that exist? Do I know people that have been successful? Theoretically, I do, but not personally. So like when I'm sitting there presenting somebody with that tray of options, the other person can only see it from their own experiences and their own habits and their own fears, like their own taste buds, AKA. So they might come to you and say, oh, you should definitely sell your home. You don't want to risk. And then they're going to start influencing your decision, right? Because they're going to start telling you their fears and they're going to start projecting their experiences onto you. So all day long, you're going around with decisions that you need to make and you're putting it on a platter, and like a server, you're walking around and saying, hey, which is more appealing to you? That's really what you're doing. Does this interest you? Does this appeal to you? So for my book, for instance, I had to come up with taglines for my book. And so, never doing this before, I was really curious and I just wanted to have fun with it. And I asked, my friends, relatives, everybody like that, hey, which tagline appeals to you? Now, I had the funnest time with this because this was really interesting to see who voted for what appealed to who. It was a super fascinating experience for me. But at the end of the day, I realized that this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm saying, hey, look, here's some taglines. Which one appeals to you the most? Well, that appeals to you, but that doesn't make any of the other choices less valuable. So it's really what is in my heart and what guides me, right? At the end of the day, it is still my choice. At the end of the day, I can choose to accept people's advice, their influence, their input, or I can decide to reject it individually and collectively, depending on how many people I ask. So I hope this gives you a good idea of what happens when we give our authority away. Because you are the only person responsible for you. Who else is going to do it? And here's the one thing I have seen with coaching people. Sometimes they don't want to make the decision because they don't want to have to blame themselves or beat themselves up. And it's so much easier and convenient to blame somebody else. But you accepted that person's input. So there is no putting it onto somebody else to blame. So sometimes in like marital situations, when you're coaching somebody, you'll see situations where one partner puts a decision on the other partner. And then when that decision goes badly, they're like, I told you this is what we should do. How helpful is that? And what is that person really accomplishing for themselves? So these are just things to think about because marriage is difficult when you have to make a decision and two people don't agree on it. So we're not going to get into that. That's a whole different episode. But I just wanted to illustrate more the idea of pretending that you don't have responsibility over a choice when you really do. All right. So what do I want to say? Let's go ahead and talk about what it means to take responsibility for your choices. So, really, everything that you do in your life that is you directed is your responsibility. There's plenty of things that are outside your control that aren't something that you have 100% of decision making capability over. But for those things that you do, then they are your responsibility. For instance, your diet, the foods that you choose to eat, what you choose to listen to, what you choose to watch, how you decide to vote. All of these are your choices. These are things that you're responsible for. The thoughts that you think, even the emotions that you feel, let's go back to that one. So your first thought that pops up into your brain is usually automatic generated and it comes from past conditioning. So that first thought is kind of an automatic thought. And that one may not be controllable. I'll give you that. But the thoughts that preceded and then the attention that you're giving to it, how long you think about them, all of that is within your control. Deciding to linger on those thoughts, deciding to think more thoughts. Do you see where I'm going with this? This is where you get to exercise your control, and that is your responsibility. So your attitudes, even your sleep, and I can already hear some people being like, well, I have sleep insomnia, and that's not something that I choose. All right. Let's get coached on that because there are a number of things that are in your control. I find that a lot of people can't sleep because they don't have the practice of having this calmness within their body, especially right before bed. I find that their stress level impacts their sleep. I find that they're not spending any time with themselves affects their ability to sleep. Now, I'm not a doctor, and there can be medical reasons that are impacting your sleep, but there are also practices that you can do to help you sleep. The diet you eat affects how you sleep. For instance, if, there's people out there like, well, I don't drink any coffee and I still can't sleep. How much chocolate are you eating before bed? Like, what are you doing to help calm your state down? What thoughts and emotions are you struggling with that are impacting your sleep? Like, these are the things that you would have to dig into and look at. And they're not just black and white, super easy questions, but to a certain degree, you do have influence over your sleep. Sleeping at the same time consistently will help you. Now, there's things that I can't help you with. Like if your hormones are affecting your sleep, that's not something that I can help you with. That's something that a medical professional would have to help you with. All right, so just making a distinction between that. So yeah, self-talk, that is in your control. Absolutely. Big one right there. So there's a lot of things that are inside your control and therefore responsibility. All right, so the first step that I would like you to consider with claiming your authority is awareness. Awareness over where you're leaking your power. Where are you giving somebody your choices and your decisions? And I'm not saying that you can't get data and take data from people and consider it and weigh it, but there is a tendency for many people out there to do more than just consider it, but to use that authority figure in their life as putting more weight on this data point versus somebody else. So like when we grew up and we were kids, maybe when we were deciding what college to go to or what trade school to go to or where to live when we first leave our parents' home, they were huge authority figures for us. And so their opinion had more weight. That is something that we kind of societally have been brought up to. But now that you are standing 2 feet on your own and you are an adult and you can think and ration for yourself, that's what I would ask you, is to have more awareness of who's up on a pedestal for you on making decisions for you. Who do you trust more than you trust yourself? Okay, that's really what I'm asking. Because my goal is for you to really lean on your own intuition, your own gut reaction, your own instincts, and to trust you. Because one of the things from a spiritual aspect that I teach my clients is that your subconscious, your soul, the soul that comes to you into this body is so wise. It is so unbelievably wise. And it knows future you, and it knows where your future is going. And if you get quiet and you get to a place where the mind stops just chattering and going on and on and on, you're going to start hearing or sensing, or ideas start popping up that really guide you, that help you make your own choices. So you can get people's data and you can set with that data. And like one of the things, like with my human design, I have emotional authority. And that's okay if you don't understand what I'm talking about, but I'm just using this as an example. But with emotional authority, my emotions have to go up and down and come to a neutral position before I make a decision. And since 70% of the population out there are emotional authority people, as I am, some people are splenic and can make their decisions instantaneous, but that's a small percentage of the population, like 20. Whereas I represent 70% of the population, right? So letting your emotions ride and come back to neutral is going to help at least 70% of the people out there listening. So, all right. So the first step is awareness. And then the second step, well, let me go right there. When I also talk about awareness, this is a place where you need to start being present. And this is a practice for me. I'm no different than you. The practice of being present in the situation. So not allowing my thoughts to go so far in the future, not allowing my thoughts to go way back behind me into the past, but being present. Also acknowledging where my body is reacting, what it's feeling. So this is about having a relationship with yourself, and that is needed for you to have your own personal authority to help you make decisions for yourself. For you to be able to know who you are means that you need to pay attention to your thoughts coming up, your reactions in your body, all of those things. So, step two is about consciously making choices, consciously making a decision. So, I talk a lot about this because I'm such a, I train the brain essentially, especially with hypnosis. And those first thoughts that come up, right? They're those unconscious thoughts. So almost a lot of your decisions, I would say, a lot of your decisions are based on this unconscious aspect. And if you don't trust yourself and you're giving your choices to other people, that's one aspect of it. And then a second aspect of it is that you're reliving the past over and over because the unconscious part of your brain, the subconscious part of your brain is going to bring up past experiences and past emotions for you that kind of cage you into this. So step two is about consciously making your choices. All right. And so a part of step two is about questioning everything. I mean, everything. Who taught you this way of thinking? Does this come from, your church? Does it come from your parents? Does it come from a teacher? Does it come from the news? Like, kind of get an idea of who influenced you to have these type of thoughts. Think about what happened in the past and how evident is it, going to be into the future. Like, what is your evidence that it is going to happen again, exactly the same way? Like these type of things, like question why you have this thought. Consider what you really want in your life. So this is about dreaming. Step two is about what do you really, really want? What's your heart's desire? Because what you are seeking is seeking you. So if you have a heart's desire for something, there's a reason for it. There's a reason why you have this inclination towards something. And nobody else is going to know that or understand that or relate to it the way that you do because it's in you, it's in your heart. All right. And then considering how you want to respond. So step three is about having compassion for yourself. So step one, you're having that awareness. Step two, you're consciously making a decision. Step three, you've made the decision already. So now you need to start having compassion for yourself because it's very easy to slip into old habits, to go into those old pathways. It's very easy to sink back into asking other people, and leaning on their understanding instead of your own understanding. So having compassion for yourself, watching that self-talk, how you're judging yourself, and just pick yourself back up. Put yourself back in the right direction over and over and over. People that are struggling with money issues, right? It's sometimes hard for them to believe that they are worthy of having money. And if that's something that you want to believe, that you are worthy of having money, you got to pick yourself up, forgive yourself for whatever step back that you take, put yourself back onto track and reclaim it. Reclaim it. You are a person worthy of having money. Whatever it is that you need to establish your authority, right? In general, you are loved and you are worthy, okay? Boils down to those two things. All right, so then the last step is just like rinse and repeat. You're going to do this over and over and over again. So becoming your own authority is about trusting yourself, having a relationship with yourself, deciding who you want to be, what you want your life to look like, and then holding fast to it and just pick yourself up, have compassion for yourself, and repeat the steps over and over and over until you get there. All right. That is basically what I wanted to share with you guys today. There's so much to this topic. It's a shame the authority is something that we have to work so hard for because it's innately ours. It's just somewhere along the line we were trained that we needed to look to somebody else for permission. I see this with people that want to leave a marriage. They're looking for permission. I see this for people that want to make a choice that's different than the choice that they currently have right now. And they come to coaches looking for permission. But as a coach, I'm going to tell you, you don't need my permission. You don't need another coach's permission. You have the authority already. So start going back and questioning, like in step 2, start questioning why you have the thoughts that you need to look for authority. What is it that is causing you to hold yourself back on this stuff? All right. You all matter, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.